Hey guys, Rudi here with another CSSE1001 Python tutorial. This week we'll be looking at the week 9 tutorial, Graphical User Interfaces, or as you'll hear me calling them for the rest of perceivable time, GUIs, because it sounds a lot cooler and easier. So what's a GUI, right? So basically we've written all this code so far, right? We spent 9 weeks writing this boilerplate code that, does all these great functions and, allows us to do some really nifty things, but it looks kind of crap, right? We just got all this text coming up on the screen and it's not very intuitive. It doesn't look very nice for a user to use. And that's where graphical user interfaces come in, right? So in other words, these sort of things here that you're used to seeing every day, like these windows, the X's, all the buttons, that sort of interactivity with the user, that is a lot more user-friendly and a lot more sort of friendly to people who aren't very familiar with IT concepts and that sort of thing. So I'm actually just going to jump right into the tutorial today, and this is the week9.py code that you'll have downloaded. So let's actually just open this up and sort of have a feel for what's going on here. Okay, so here's our GUI, right? Pretty basic at the moment. We've got some text, we got a button that clicks, makes some stuff come up in our console. We've got a little title, and so let's actually have a look at what's happening over here. So firstly, you'll notice that we've imported tkinter. That's a really standard Python GUI library, right? So it allows us to set up these boxes and these buttons and map events to those buttons and those kinds of things, right? So let's have a look over here. So we started off with our main function down here. Root takes on tk.tk. So tk was the library we imported as tk. And .tk basically just makes our starting window. So just this big guy here. Okay, and now you'll see that we've set up our app for our GUI as a class, right? This is another really standard behavior, right? We sort of define all the behaviors we need in a class for our GUI, and then we can just set up the GUI once, set up the app, and you see our main function actually becomes really nice and concise. And then this root.main loop, remembering that root is just our little box here, root.main loop sort of just sets the GUI in motion, right? Allows us to start capturing like clicks and change labels and all that kind of good stuff. So let's see what we've got up here. So we set up root, we then passed root into the app. So if we check the init on the app, we'll see that root's getting passed through as master. So in other words, the sort of master of this GUI is this big box here, this overall window. So we save our master, we can set the title on the master, hello, you can see it's popping up over here. We can set a minimum size on the master. Yeah, clicking is hard. Where's the corner? There we go. See, I can't actually make it any smaller than that. Wow, that took a while. And there's all sorts of properties you can set on this. Just go ahead and Google the tkinter documentation on Python if you really want to see sort of all the customizability you can add to this. And now we can get into what we call the widgets, the little elements or components inside the GUI. So we can see we start off with something here, tk.label. Okay, so label is essentially just a way of displaying text. It's like a text box. It's basically a text box. So let's just look at the parameters we're doing when we're setting something up. Whenever we make a widget in our GUI, the first thing we pass through is the thing we want to put it inside, right? So in this case, our master box is our overall sort of container. And so if we want to put our label in the master box, we pass through master as the first parameter. After that, we've then got all these keyword arguments that we can pass through, right? So in this case, the only thing we really need is master, but we've got all these optional sort of values we can pass through. So we can pass through a text. I'm sure there's others. I can't remember what they are off the top of my head, but it's a label, right? The only thing we really generally need too often is text. Maybe you want to set a border on it or something like that. And then what we do is once we've created this label, right? So we've created our label, we've told it where we want it to go. We then need to pack it, right, in order to actually put it onto the screen. So for instance, if I actually get rid of this line pack here, close this down, and then we try running this again, right, you'll see my label's gone. Okay, so the pack is the thing that actually puts it on the screen. So we set up our label and everything, but we don't actually put it on the screen until we've packed it. Okay, now here you'll start to see we've also got some parameters inside our pack here. Okay, so pack tk.top, you'll notice that all our stuff seems to sort of be leaning towards the top side, right? And that's because we've packed it towards the top side. You've also got tk left, right, and bottom, that, to the left, right, and bottom respectively. Okay, and let's get onto this button now. We can make buttons, tk.button. Once again, it's inside our master, our root object, or our root window. So we pass in master as the first guy, and then we've got some optional parameters. Once again, text, whoops, set some nice click text on the button. And now here you'll see we've passed in a command. Okay, now the command attribute or keyword argument lets you select a function that gets called when you click on the button. Okay, so you'll see we put here self.sayHello, right? And you'll see that in the class we have a say hello function. Now notice here, notice carefully over here, we haven't called the function, right? We've just passed in the actual function itself, because the button is smart enough to go, oh cool, this is the function, I'll call that function myself later on when I need it with the right parameters, right? So you'll notice here when I click the button, well, say hello is just printing out some stuff. Okay, cool, we're printing out some stuff. Awesome. So now, there's one other object, or one other main sort of widget that's important for getting into this early stuff, and it'll also help with explaining this side stuff over here. And that is the frame. Okay, now actually I'm going to bring that back up. So you notice at the moment we're putting everything inside this master window, right? But that's not the only sort of container we can set up. We can also set up these things called frames. And now what the frames allow us to do is to pack the different widgets inside different frames, right? And it actually allows us to make some really sort of customizable looking GUIs, which is actually what most of this tute will be about when we get there. So for now, how do we set up a frame? I'm just going to chuck one in here. So tk.frame. Now with all other widgets, where do we want this? Well, we want it inside our master window. So master goes through as the first guy. And for now, that's all we really need in our frame. And remember, if we want our frame to appear on the screen, we need to pack it. I'm just going to set tk.top. Doesn't really matter for the moment. So we've got this frame in there, right? Oh, th. What have I done? tk.frame. Cool. Probably can't tell the difference, right? But there is a little frame in there. We just can't see it at the moment. Now what we're actually going to try doing now is putting the button and the label inside that frame. So remember, this first guy here is what we're packing into. So instead of packing into master for the moment, I'm just going to pack everything into the frame. Again, probably can't see what's happening. So let's actually change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come up here and set some stuff super quickly in our frame. Now let's see if I can remember what the right parameters were for this. I think it was highlight background. Let's just set this blue. And then let's also set the highlight thickness to be 5 is probably enough. There we go. Okay, cool. Ooh. Okay, so you see now I managed to set up a little border around the frame, so you can actually sort of see what's happening here. So if we look inside our frame, right, our button and our label have been sort of packed into the frame. They're sort of chilling inside this guy. And you'll notice that the frame itself is actually not taking up that much space. It's basically taking up the minimum amount of space it needs to contain this label and this button. And that's where we get two other sort of what are they called? Arguments that we can pass into our pack here, right? The two other ones we have are expand and fill. So let's just talk about expand for the moment. So expand you can set to true or to false. It's false by default, but let's set it to true. Okay, you'll notice that this has sort of become centered, right? Now what expand does is it basically says to the thing that it's expanding, it says, okay, so try and take up as much space as you can. Okay, so you'll notice that this frame, while it sort of looks like it's this small, it's actually taking up the entire, it's trying to extend as far as it can, right? Now the actual frame isn't using all that space, it's sort of just reserving this space for itself, right? That's what that expand true does, and then it's centered itself. That's sort of default behavior there. Now the other sort of thing we can set is fill. Now fill's got a couple options. We can fill in the X direction, in the Y direction, or in both, or in neither. Neither is sort of the default behavior we've got happening here. But what fill basically says is, okay, so expand is giving you this reserve space around me, fill is saying now use this space. Okay, so here we see it's filling out as far as it can in the X direction, this frame here. And so let's also just have a quick look at what the other ones look like. Mainly just both. If we expand in all directions, right? As you'd expect, you see it's filling as far as it can. Now in terms of packing, our button and our label here are still packing to the top within the frame, right? So they appear as far up as they can. But if we were, for instance, to change these guys to packing to the left, ooh, capital L, left, you'll notice that they come over here. Now also note the order here, right? So we packed to the left, the label first, and then we pack the button to the left. And you'll notice that the labels come first, then the button, and they're sort of branching out in this direction. So packing order is very important. I like to think of it sort of like Tetris. So if you imagine, if we pack to the left, the first thing appears on the left, and then you imagine the next thing sliding in, and then the next thing sliding in on top of it, right? And we sort of pack them in Tetris style. I've actually got a quick bit of demonstration code I set up here. So this is going to be a demonstration of if we try and pack 5 buttons in a row. And I've just sort of animated it slightly so we can see it happening in slow motion. So we see we've got the first button packing to the left, then the second one, then the third one, right? And we see they sort of stack out like this Tetris. So these are all just buttons, just purely packing to tk.left. But the order that we pack them in sort of determines this where they stack up like this. Just another example. Let's try and make this a little bit more Tetrisy if we can. Packing to tk.bottom, right? And you'll notice that as we pack the buttons in this order, that they sort of appear as we'd expect them to, almost as like gravity, you know, falling down. And, you know, tk.right, they'd stack up this way, and tk.top, they'd stack up sort of the opposite of this. Okay, it takes a bit of time to sort of get your head around it, but if you just play around with these settings, you can actually really do some really cool things. Yeah, okay, cool. I think that's about what we've got set up here for the introductory section for GUI. So let's actually get into the chute. So we're going to build a small application which has a label and some commands to change the color of the label. Download that code that we've got here. I added some stuff, but it's basically there. And examine how it works. Modify the following layout to look like this. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. We've got a label which seems to have taken up a lot of space for itself. And then we've got 2 buttons down here side by side. Okay, so bit of a hint of what's going on here. We can see that there's sort of a verticalness, I don't know what the word is, right? We can see there's sort of like a vertical thing happening here, right? We've got the label and it's above these 2 buttons here, right? But conversely down here, these buttons are clearly packed in a sort of X-way, right? Left to right or right to left. This sort of signifies that we've got 2 kind of layers happening here, right? We've got this layer, right? And this layer. Okay, so since the packing is in different orders, what we can actually do here is use a frame. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a frame around these buttons. That way we can pack the the label and the frame vertically, and then within this frame we can pack these buttons horizontally. Okay, now I understand that might have been a little bit confusing, but just to show you what's going on, I'm going to go up here. So let's use some slightly better variables. Button frame. We want to pack button frame to the top and the label to the top. Okay, so let's put, or actually I guess we can just use bottom here as well. Bottom, and pack them both to the bottom. And now what we're going to do is we want our buttons to go in the button frame, right? But we want our label now to go back to being in the root object. Okay, so let's just have a quick look at what that's looking like so far. Okay, cool. I have screwed something up because, oh yeah, names frame is not defined. I forgot to rename it to button frame somewhere. Yep, there we go. Button frame. Let's rerun that. Okay, cool. There we go. So you see we've set up now the button in a frame, and this guy, this chooser button, is sort of sitting at the top. There's my GUI gone. Okay, so you know, practically there, right? So let's just keep working with this. So what we're going to do next is get the other button in here for now, right? So we'll have button, this one can be the blue button. And we're going to pack button blue, right? And now we want to have a basically identical button for change to green. Okay, so let's just get that in there. Green and green. Okay, we want to pack both of these into the button frame, right? And then note the order on the packing. We want the blue one to be on the left, right? So since we're packing to the left, the blue one has to pack first. Then the green one comes in and packs afterwards. And let's just clean up this text. Change to blue. And let's do the same down here. Change to green. Cool. Now, let's see what that looks like. Okay, cool. Now we're still packing to the left, so we still got this over here. Now, if we have a bit of a think about what's going on here, at the moment our frame is sort of dominating the space in this in the window, right? Whereas over here we can see that it's sort of the opposite. The label is dominating the space. Now our frame is dominating the space because we initially set frame expand and fill both to be true and both respectively, right? And that's just because I was showing stuff. But we actually don't want that anymore. We kind of want the opposite. We don't want our frame to do that, right? We want our label to sort of expand and dominate the sort of the area that we've got here, the real estate. So where's our label? Self.label. Now we are going to tell him to take up as much, sort of reserve as much space as he wants. Okay, wow, that'll pretty much fix that entirely. Okay. GUIs are fun. See, we've pretty much got it, right? I'm going to just keep this border on here for now, just so you can sort of see what's happening with the frame as we go. We can see that's pretty much what we want, right? We've just got a little bit of a gap happening here. Note that there should be a vertical padding of 10 pixels around the buttons. Okay? So we want vertical padding. In other words, we want padding in the Y direction. So what we're going to do with that is we're actually going to set some pad Y when we go to pack the frame. We could do it on the buttons, but I'm just going to choose to do it on the frame, right? Because the frame's sort of containing both of them. So when we go to pack, we set the side. Now let's set the pad in the Y direction, and we wanted it to be 10 pixels. And there you go. See, we've got that little bit of a gap, just like how the cheat sheet had it. Okay, so that's pretty much the first part we've got going down there, right? Yeah, cool. Okay. What do we got here? Next, modify the class so that clicking the buttons modifies the text and the color of the label as follows. This label is blue and it's gone blue, and this label is green and it's gone green. Okay. So a couple things here. Now, since we want clicking the button to do this, right, we would have to give the button a command. So at the moment, the button's just saying hello, which is, that's great and all, super friendly, but not really what we want. We want the blue button to change to blue our label. Okay, so how do we change something that's already existing? Okay, so most widgets in this case have a config method, right? So when I say config method, so we want this label to change. So what's our label called? Self._label, and it's got a .config method. Now this .config method basically allows you to set all of the parameters that you can set when the label is initialized, right? So see, we set text here to be choose a button. Now when we click the button, we want it to go to this label is blue. So into config we can pass text, and what do we want it to be? This label is blue. Okay, now remember, change to blue needs to go into our blue button. So our command should be self.change to blue because it's in this class. And remember, once again, don't call the function, right? With the brackets, just pass it in like that. Let's see how we go with that. Change to blue. This label is blue. Awesome. Okay, so that's half of it. Now we also need to set the background of this label to blue. How do we do that? With the background attribute, right? Pretty straightforward. So again, in our config, we want to change the text, but we also want to change the background. BG, or you can type the word background as well. And now there's a whole bunch of things we can do here. We can use hex codes, if you know what those are. So these FF, AA, 99, these kind of six-digit hexadecimal codes, if you're familiar with colors from Photoshop or something. Or, if you're not too familiar with that, blue. Also good, right? Nice and simple. Let's try running that again. Change to blue. And there we go. Our background's gone all blue. We can barely read the text, but you know, that's fine. That's fine. Readability is not important, right? Okay. Now we want to do the same thing for the green one, right? So, pretty similar code. Oop. Change to green this time. This label is green. Oops. Background green. And it'll come up here and we'll set this guy to be changed to green. Okay, change to blue. Label is blue. Background's gone blue because we set the config. And change to green. This label is green. Okay. So, not too complicated, right? We can just set the config to reconfigure attributes. And other than that, not too much happening here, right? We're just setting blue and green as we go. Okay. Hint, use packing options such as these to achieve the desired layout. Okay, well, we've already done that, so cool. And there we go, use the .config method to modify the text and color. Always read the tutorial when you do these things, guys, right? There's often hints that are like just under the question that tell you exactly what to do. So we will now expand the program to allow the user to enter their own choice of color. Modify the program to show the following layout. Okay, so let's just compare for the moment here. Okay, so we've got sort of the same thing. We've kind of just added this extra bit down the bottom here. Change the color to what looks like some sort of text field that we can type into and a button. So this thing here is called an entry widget, right? TK's entry widget allows the user to type a single line of text into an application. The .get method retrieves the current value from the entry. Okay, we've got a link to the notes here. I'm actually gonna have a look at this because I think the course notes are really valuable when you're doing these tutorials, right? Like the course notes are kind of written almost around the tutorials. And in particular, I think the GUI section of the tutorials is very good. We got lots of example code here, example configurations, and pretty much exactly what they do, right? So you've got a whole section on the entry widget. Now I'm going to go through this with you now, right? But basically you can go through this and get a good gist of how to do anything with the entry widget. So always remember to, if you're a bit lost on what's going on, always check the course notes first, because there's some good stuff in there. But for now, so once again, you'll see that we've added a third sort of section vertically, okay? But inside it, we want to be packing horizontally. Since packing in both directions is a bit weird and a bit difficult, we're going to do the same trick we used last time, right? We're going to put this whole thing in a frame, okay? Because then we can stack this frame, oh, sorry, not this frame, but this label on top of this frame here for the buttons, on top of this frame here for the color changer. Okay, so I am going to set that up here. Color frame. So here's the tk.frame, getting packed inside master, always is the first attribute. And now I'm actually going to set a border up on this guy. You guys don't have to do this, but just showing it so you can see what's happening. And I'm going to set a red border on this one. And highlight thickness to be 5 again. Okay, now we won't be able to see our frame unless we pack it, right? Okay, now how are we going to pack this guy? So let's see, we want him to be on the bottom, okay? So since this guy's packed to bottom and this guy's packed to bottom, and we want this guy to be below both of them, we can pack to bottom here, but as long as we do it first, this one will come in first, then the button frame will come down, and then finally the label will come down last. So I'm going to pack it like this. Okay, and now let's set up what's going inside, right? So we've got a label, color label. It's going to be tk.label. It's going inside our color frame, right? And its text is going to be change the color to. That's going slightly off the screen, so let's just chuck that down here. Cool. What else have we got here? We've got an entry widget. So sort of keep it the theme we've got here. Color entry takes on tk.entry. Okay, now where is this guy going? This guy's going inside our color frame once again. And that's about all we need to set up here in our entry guy, I think. Yeah, for now, at least. Okay, now we've made these two guys here, but we won't be able to see them until we pack them. Oh, actually, wait, sorry, there's a third button as well. Okay, I'll do that first. Color button is a tk.button going in our color frame. Making GUI stuff's pretty repetitive, right? But, you know, we set it up once in a nice class, and we probably don't have to deal with it too much after that. So its text is change it. I can probably, oh, yeah, actually I have to add a command as well anyway. Oh, where did my text go? Okay, cool, change it. And we know this is a button, right? So we're gonna need a command for this anyway. Let's just put a placeholder in there for now. We'll come back and write that function later. Okay, so let's see. We want the label to be on the left, then the entry box, then the button. So let's pack them all to the left with the label first. Oh, whoops. Side equals tk dot left. Okay, then we're going to pack our entry box or entry field to the left after that. Okay, and then finally, we're going to pack our button into the color frame pack to the left as well. Okay, I'm actually just going to leave out this command bit here because I think Python might yell at me. So let's just do that. Name th is not defined. Oh, I did it again. Where is it? Line 52 in module color frame th.frame. Where's color frame? tk. Okay, sweet. Cool. So you can see we've got our red frame here, right? Because we set the background to be red. And then we packed the frame, right, to the bottom first. Inside the frame, right, we set up this label. And we packed it to the left first. So the label goes first on the left. Then we packed the entry guy on the left. Then we packed the button on the left. Cool. Okay. So, does this look exactly? Let's just see if this is... Oh, okay, so you can see a sort of slight difference here, right? This frame on this thing looks like it's expanding as this guy gets bigger. So let's see if I can grab the edge. Yes, you notice our frame on the bottom, right? It's sort of staying a static size. So that's not what we want. So let's have a think about this, right? It looks like the entry thing is the guy that's getting bigger. Okay, so cool. We would go to our entry widget where we pack it, right? And we want it to get bigger, so we want it to take up as much space as it can. Expand true. Okay. Okay, that doesn't look like it's done anything, right? No, it doesn't seem to have done anything. Okay, so what's happening there? So we've told our entry widget to take up as much space as it can, right? But nothing's changed because it already is taking up as much space as it can, right? Because what's this entry widget inside? Shouldn't have closed that down. It's inside this red frame here, right? And the red frame is basically at maximum stretch for what it is at the moment, right? It's going, cool, I'm full. And the entry widget here is going, give me more space. And the frame's going, sorry bro, I haven't got any more space. So we can change that by coming up to our color frame and making him take up more space. Okay? Okay, so the color frame seems to have stretched everything out now, right? That isn't what we want. That isn't what we wanted at all. So let's try one more time. Let's get rid of that expand, and let's try and fill. Now, since we don't want to push upwards, let's try and fill in the X direction. And here we go. We're getting something a bit more like how we wanted. Okay, so here you'll see the entry widget has sort of pushed everything away, right? These guys are as far left and right as they can. And the entry widget's reserving all this space. It's being really greedy. And it's being kind of spiteful because it's not even using it at the moment, right? So we're pretty close. The only thing we need now is we need to tell this entry widget to actually use the space. And how do we do that? Fill. And we only want to fill in that X direction. And there we go. Okay? So the entry widget now taking up as much space as it can. And there we go. There's our GUI. Okay, now we've got the borders and stuff in there. And it looks like there's actually a little bit of a pad around this bottom frame here. So let's actually put that in. Remember pad, we want a pad in the vertical, so pad Y. Let's set that to 10. And since we're going to have pad around this guy in both directions, I'm actually going to get rid of the pad on this button frame. Where's the button frame? Button frame, let's get rid of this pad. Cool, there we go. Nice crisp looking GUI. Awesome. Okay. So let's keep going here. There's not too much more to go now. So what did we want? We wanted pressing the changer button changes the color and text of the label based on the text in the entry widget. Okay, so for example, you type yellow and stuff happens. Change it. Okay, now we haven't set a change it method, so nothing's going to happen, but that's what we want to happen. Okay, so it looks like we want to set a method for this button to use. So def change it. Now what do we want this to do? Well, first let's go up to where our color button is and add the command because we want it to use. And remember that we're inside our class, right? So self dot change it. Now what do we want this to do? We want it to go up to our entry widget and we want it to grab what's in the entry widget and we sort of want to do some stuff to this label based on that. Okay, so where is our entry widget? Color entry. Okay, so here we've got a bit of a problem. We want to access this color entry guy from down here, right? So you might think we can just do something along the lines of that, right? Or whatever we need to, right? But we actually, we can't grab that at the moment because the color entry is a local variable, right? So he only exists in this init. If we want to be able to access this color entry guy from down here, we're going to have to make this a bit more, we're going to have to make it persist a bit more, right? So how do we do that in our class? We assign it to the actual class instance. Self.colorEntry. Okay, so now we've got this self guy. Well, since it's in self, we know it's down here and we can now use it. So what did we want? We wanted to grab the text out of the entry widget. Now, if we see here, the .get method relieves the current value from the entry. Okay, so if we go to our entry box and we go .get, it should give us the text out of our box. Okay, so let's store that in some variable color. Now what do we want to do now? We basically just want to update our label to change the name and background just like we did over here. So let's do the same thing. Self._label. Noting here that label itself we also set up as a self variable, right? As a class, I can't remember the word, as a sort of private variable to the class, right? It belongs to the class. So we can access it down here when we want to change stuff. Now how do we change stuff? .config, same as the previous ones, right? And we want to change the text and we wanted to change the background. Okay, now we should just be able to set the background to the color. And as for the text, let's try and do some formatting here, right? So this label is, and we put in our little braces like that. And now we can call .format and pass through color. Okay, so .format basically replaces anytime it finds braces with the variables we've got here. So see, we've got color. This label is color, should be coming up in here. And we should be setting the background to the color as well, right? This line's basically the same as we did for the blue and the green. So let's run this now. Change the color to yellow. Sweet, this label is yellow, right? So see, yellow got passed as our color variable because it was inside the entry field, right? So when we called entry, it went, entry.get, it went, cool, what's in here? Yellow. So let's text yellow, format yellow, set our background to yellow. Everything is yellow. It was all yellow. Oh, these references come to me like 2 seconds too late every time. So this is great and all right, but you know, what happens if I come along and I decide that yellow's a silly color and instead I want to make mine dark chocolate brown. Oh, unknown color name dark chocolate brown. Okay, so TK-int is a little bit basic in both senses and it doesn't have a very wide array of colors, right? Or what if I come along and I want to change my color to fish? Also not a color, right? So what are we getting here? We're getting some sort of enter TCL error, TCL error, unknown color name. So let's try and user proof our widget here a bit. So what have we got? Modify the program so that if the text in the entry widget isn't a color, an error box appears, for example. To display an error message box, we use the message box library. First, import message box from tkenter. Okay. So from tkenter, import message box. Cool. Just get a good import message box. Then message box.showError will display an error box with the given title and message. Okay. So we can see down here, here's where we set our stuff, right? And here's where our color can possibly go wrong. Now, when it goes wrong, we know it's going to throw one of these TCL errors, right? Straight out of tkenter. So now what we want to do is if we get this error, we want to handle it and we want to spit out this nice message box for the user. Okay? Now, this is probably sounding pretty similar to your assignment, right? When something goes wrong, we want to handle it and do something with it. So you should be sitting there and going, well, what can I do here? And we can use our exceptions, okay? So try. So what are we going to do? We're going to use a try, and then we're going to use an accept. So basically, we're going to try and do this config, right? We're going to try and set the text and the background to be this, okay? And if we accept, if we get a bad color, right, what's going to happen? We're going to get thrown this guy. So what we can do is we don't want to accept every kind of error that goes wrong, right? We only want to stop these color errors. So it's a TCL error, right? And notice since this belongs to that TK library we imported, I'm going to call tk.tcl error. Now, for the moment, let's just print our color variable that we got here. So let's see how that goes. Fishy. Cool, so here you can go, right? So instead of throwing the TCL error, we tried to do it. It threw a TCL error, and then it got caught in this accept statement, tk.tcl error. Now at the moment, we're just printing out the color, right? So what do we want to do instead? Instead of doing that, we want to make a nice, pretty message box. So first, import message box, then message box.showError will display an error box with the given title and message. Okay, well, that's pretty simple. Message box.show, was it underscore error? Where is it? Oh, yep, show error. And our title, it looks like, is invalid color. And our message is going to be something is not a color. Okay, so notice here it's got these little quotey things around it. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to actually use my big quotes on the outside. That allows me to use my little quotes on the inside. And then, yep, so let's use some more string formatting. I'm going to space this out a bit. So we want to have our color in here. Then we want to have is not a color. Call our dot format, and we're going to pass through our color. So basically, same thing we did over here. We're just passing through the color into this little brace. So we can be like, yep, it's not a color. Oh, the word color is starting to look like it's spelled wrong to me, but it's not. It's spelled right. It's fine. Oof. We're going to pass through as not a color, and then see how we go from there. Beastie. Ooh. Oh, look at that crisp error message. Invalid color. Beastie is not a color. Okay. So you can see in this way, this is why try, accept, and exceptions are so powerful, right? They allow us to sort of capture this unwanted behavior and sort of shape it in a way that we want, right? So instead of just spitting out all this red crap on our screen that makes everyone sort of shit themselves, instead we capture it, we store the stuff we need, the color, and then we print a nice little error box, right? That'll still make the average person crap themselves, but to us now, after all this sort of raw code we've been doing, this actually looks really nice and refreshing. Beastie is not a color, little error box. It's really nice. And yeah, that's pretty much the shoot here, guys. Yeah, it's just setting up that sort of basic intro to GUI. Okay, so sort of main things to take away from this, right? Frames are a container, right? Inside our frames or inside our main master window, we can pack these widgets, these buttons, and these little entry boxes and labels. Right, we'll sort of start encountering a few more widgets we can use later on next week, and then, you know, obviously if you go from Google, you'll find some stuff you can use. But that's sort of the basis of these GUIs, right? We've sort of packed them. Then we've got these couple properties we can play around with, fill and expand mostly, and the side pack. Those three main things basically allow us to do anything we want, right? Sort of using a combination of different frames to set up these sort of almost grid-like sort of fields. And by using different packs, we can basically make anything we want using tkinter. Okay? So it's also fairly crude, right? Like it's fairly basic in terms of what we're doing here, right? We're just putting a lot of boxes inside a lot of boxes, but it's still very powerful. And then other than that, just a sort of a reiteration of classes, right? So using self to pass through the things that we want to be able to change later, like the label and this entry widget, which we wanted to be able to access, and then a little bit of try except stuff. So remember, try, anything that goes wrong in here, any exceptions that get raised, we can capture in except blocks, and then we handle how we want our exceptions to sort of, sort of come out to the user afterwards. We can make them look a bit nicer like that. Okay, sweet. Okay, so pretty much that's the GUI. I guess I'll quickly get rid of these borders just so we can sort of see it in its total glory. Oop. Geez, delete. And there we go. Right, just like the picture, just like the picture. Cool. Okay, sweet. So as always, if you guys got any questions about this, drop me a comment here on the channel, or go and post on Piazza. GUIs basically they take a little bit of experimenting. Just go around and experiment a bit with the expand and fills and packs. Write a bit of custom code, see what happens, see what it looks like. It's basically the best way. It's just have a bit of a play around, see what you can do. You can do some pretty nifty stuff. But yeah, other than that, drop me any questions here or on Piazza. And yeah, as always, hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys next week.